Your Bibles to the last chapter of the book of Proverbs, chapter 31. We're going to continue our study in verses 10 to 31. Last week we began to look at this 22-verse acrostic poem that describes in detail a wise and worthy woman, or we could say a godly wife and mother. As I mentioned last week briefly, this poem was taught to King Lemuel when he was a young man. You see that all the way up in verse 1. It was a mother who took the time to instruct her son about the kind of woman he should marry, essentially. It was her utmost desire that he would find an excellent wife, one who would be committed to the home, devoted to a husband, diligent in her housework, and fervent in her faith. King Lemuel's mother laid out in plain terms the God-given responsibilities and roles of a godly woman, and basically said to her son that this is the kind of woman you should marry. One that has these qualities and characteristics, one who's characterized by these actions and attitudes. Notice what Lemuel's mother taught him. Follow along as I read verses 10 to 31. An excellent wife who can find, for her worth is far above jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. She looks for wool and flax and works with her hands in delight. She is like merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. She rises also while it is still night and gives food to her household and portions to her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. From her earnings she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She senses that her gain is good. Her lamp does not go out at night. She stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hands grasp the spindle. She extends her hand to the poor, and she stretches out her hands to the needy. She's not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. She makes coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates. When he sits among the elders of the land, she makes linen garments and sells them and supplies belts to the tradesmen. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she smiles at the future. She opens her mouth in wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and bless her, her husband also, and he praises her, saying, "Many daughters have done nobly, but you excel them all." Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her the product of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates. Well, if you remember from last week, I gave you a lengthy outline to follow, 22 descriptions of a godly wife and mother. There are 22 verses in this poem. Those verses correspond with the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So this is an acrostic poem. And so we have 22 descriptions of a godly wife and mother. We already looked at the first three descriptions. In verse 10, a godly wife and mother is a precious find. Verse 11, a godly wife and mother is a trustworthy helpmate. And then in verse 12, a godly wife and mother is a do-good companion, or as I thought more about it this past week, we could have just said, or I could have just said, a beneficial companion. But those were the three verses those three verses function as an introduction to this poem. They set the stage. They give us the tone and tenor of the passage. They speak of a wife's inestimable worth in relation to her husband. Again, in verse 10, the excellent wife is a rare fortune, far more valuable than precious jewels and gems. She has great skill and ability. She's courageous and brave and fearless and heroic. She's got guts and grit. She's strong, energetic, hardworking. She even carries herself with grace and poise and dignity. All those characteristics are wrapped up in that one word, excellent, in verse 10. She is the ideal wife, the total package, hence the reason why she's so valuable, worth more than all material and monetary things. Not only that, she is also completely faithful and trustworthy. We saw this in verse 11. She's so trustworthy that her husband doesn't have any doubts or any suspicions about her character and conduct. Her husband confides in her fully. He relies on her implicitly and looks to her confidently. She is as loyal as they come. Entrusted to her is a husband's life and estate and finances, children. Everything is entrusted into her hands. There is not a single area of the home that she can't manage or handle. And in addition to that, her treatment of her husband is exceptional. It is exceptional. Verse 12, she does him good and not evil all the days of her life. I mean, what an incredible quality when you think about it. She loves and cares for her husband so deeply and so diligently that she only seeks to do him good. That's her intention. That is remarkable. Each and every day she lives to benefit him. I think that's the point of verse 12. She wants to be useful to him and assist him and support him and aid him in his responsibilities, to come alongside him, to strengthen him, to bless him. She doesn't have a malicious or unkind bone in her body. She would never plot and plan any kind of harm toward her husband. That's not her intention ever. It's not her heart's desire. Good and only good is her treatment of him. And we could even think about during those times when he's not at his best or failing to act and behave as he ought. She looks for ways to serve and support him. She is a beneficial companion throughout all of life. And so those were the three descriptions that we covered last week. Excellent wife, she's a priceless find, verse 10. She's a trustworthy helpmate, verse 11. She is a do-good or beneficial companion, verse 12. That now brings us to a fourth description of a godly wife and mother, and it's this. She is a joyful laborer. She is a joyful laborer. Look at verse 13. And just so you know, verse 13 kicks off the main portion or the main body of this passage. The main body goes from verse 13 all the way to verse 27. And the primary focus on these verses is the productivity of a godly wife and mother. She is extremely efficient and fruitful with her time and energy. She knows how to get things done. She is a productive woman and a joyful one in all of her duties. Look at verse 13. She looks for wool and flax and works with her hands in delight. In a day and age where we walk into a department store and buy clothing or shop online to have shirts and pants delivered to our front door, that kind of access to clothing was completely foreign in ancient times. In ancient times, clothing wasn't acquired that easily. Women didn't walk into a store like Dillard's or Marshall's or TJ Maxx and search all these different racks, aisles and aisles of clothing to find and purchase what they needed for a home. The mass production of clothing was unheard of. Instead, clothing was handmade, and typically handmade in the home. It was common for a wife and mother to manufacture clothes for an entire household, and that's what's taking place here in verse 13. This godly wife and mother is looking for wool and flax to make clothing for her household. She's looking for the raw materials to manufacture it. Wool, as you know, is the hair of sheep, and flax is a grass-like plant with softer fibers. Wool was typically used to make warmer clothes for the cooler months of the year, things like heavy cloaks and garments. Flax was typically used to make cooler clothes for the warmer months of the year, things like linen shirts and dresses. But before wool and flax could ever be used to make clothes, they had to be prepped and prepared. After wool had been sheared from a sheep's back and body, It then had to be thoroughly washed, removing all of the dirt and the grease and other pollutants and contaminants that were in it. It then had to be dried and then given time to shrink. And then it was pulled apart and combed to align all the different fibers. And then, and only then, was it ready for spinning and used for the production or the making of clothing. Flax had a slightly different preparation process. Flax had to be harvested. Once it was harvested, it was then dried to remove all the seeds and chaff. Then it was soaked in water anywhere from 15 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the temperature of the water. It was then dried again and then went through a process called just breaking or being broken so that you could get to the fibers. And after getting to the fibers, it was then spun into a thread and then it was used for clothing. And so when you think about the process of prepping and preparing wool and flax, it was a long, drawn-out process. Required a lot of work, required a lot of time, a lot of patience. It was a labor-intensive task. And that's just the preparation of these raw materials. After getting refined wool and flax, clothes had to be manufactured, and that took more time and more effort and energy and patience. And so from start to finish, it took days and sometimes weeks to get one article of clothing. Clothes for a household didn't come easy. I mean, could you imagine putting all that time and effort into a single shirt or a single cloak or garment? Can you imagine spending weeks and weeks, hours on end, prepping and spinning and weaving and sewing just so a child could have something to wear? I mean, you think about online shopping, that is a dream come true for us compared to this. This was time-consuming, painstaking work, and yet that's what this godly woman does. She is committed to this task, taking it upon herself to make clothes for her family, working diligently with her hands. Notice verse 13 again. She looks for wool and flax and works with her hands in delight. She works with her hands, meaning she does manual labor. I think that's the idea. She's not a couch potato. She's not a sluggard. She's not a slouch. She doesn't have idle hands. Instead, her hands are constantly busy. And in this context, busy gathering wool and flax, and then prepping it, and then preparing it, cleaning it, refining it, drying it, combing it, pulling it apart, spinning it, and then using it to manufacture clothes. Her hands rarely rest. Rarely do they take a day off. Maybe never take a day off. They don't get a break. This woman is constantly laboring for her family. But then, maybe the most remarkable thing about her labor is this. She does it joyfully. She does it joyfully. Did you notice at the end of verse 13 what it says? In delight. She works with her hands in delight. Literally, it could read, with pleasure her hands work. The Net Bible says it like this: she is pleased to work with her hands. The ESV reads, she works with willing hands. She's willing to do it. NIV reads, she works with eager hands. The idea is that she does it enthusiastically. She does it joyfully, happily. She finds great pleasure and satisfaction as she works with her hands. She doesn't need to be coerced to work or convinced to work or being forced to work. She is willing to work and does it joyfully. I mean, that is remarkable when you think about it, because there are plenty of women today who don't view manual labor in that way, as a joy. It's not something that they delight in or something that they find satisfying. Instead of joy, when it's all about housework and manual labor, a lot of times it's discontentment, discouragement, dissatisfaction, displeasure. Not this woman. She is pleased and satisfied to work with her hands. I mean, why is that? Well, why would she be so happy and joyful to do manual labor like this, going out for wool and flax, doing all the prepping, and then making it at the end into clothing? Why would she be so willing and eager and find it pleasing and satisfying? Because she's doing it for the well-being of a family, for the good of a family. She loves her family, has their best interest in mind, works for their good, labors for their benefit. She finds purpose and meaning in the tasks that fill her days. And for that reason, she does her work joyfully, eagerly, willingly. She is a joyful laborer. Ladies, think about this and how it relates to your daily tasks in the home. When it comes to the home, are you a joyful laborer? Or are you pleased and satisfied to work with your hands around the home, for the home? Do you work willingly and eagerly? Do you find purpose and meaning by doing the mundane things of life? That's essentially what this woman is doing, right? She's going out, she's finding wool and flax, doing all the prepping process, making it. That's mundane. That is uninspiring, ordinary work. That is mundane work. Do you take great delight in the routine, everyday tasks of the home? And you could think about what they are. Washing dishes, doing endless loads of laundry, vacuuming the floors, preparing meals, making beds, organizing rooms. If you have an infant, maybe the everyday task is changing diapers or bathing a child. If you have older children who are sometimes more needy than the younger children, maybe it's shopping for them or sitting alongside of them and doing schoolwork with them. Whatever the task may be, do you delight in it? Because you know that it contributes to the well-being of a family. It's for the benefit of a family. Do you find joy in doing the mundane? Do you find satisfaction in working with your hands around the home? Are you pleased to use your hands for the greater good of a household? This woman enjoys working in the home. And that's foreign in our day and age when you think about it. To work in the home, so demeaning, so belittling. Got to get out of the home. That's the mindset of our day and age. Not this woman. She enjoys working in the home, for the home. She has a positive outlook and attitude as she makes clothing for her family. She's not disappointed and disheartened by this duty. She's not telling herself that it's insignificant and meaningless. Doesn't view her work as this miserable task. Not itching again to get out of the home onto something, quote unquote, more important, climbing the corporate ladder, being an executive, being in business, making a name for herself. She is perfectly content. That's the word. That's the imagery here. In delight. She's perfectly content. Finds joy and purpose and meaning in making clothes. And that's how you ladies must view your labor in the home as well. There's purpose and meaning in doing mundane things. There's joy and delight, knowing that it meets the needs of a household. One commentator said this: it could be tempting for a wife and mother to resent tedious labor around the home, but the excellent woman maintains a content spirit. She is happy to do whatever is necessary to make her family comfortable. Her contribution to the family by doing uninspiring and ordinary tasks is a delight. Can you say the same thing, ladies? Can the same thing be said of you when you contribute to a family by doing uninspiring, ordinary things? Is it a delight? Are you a joyful laborer for a household? Fifth description of a godly wife and mother. She is a resourceful provider. She is a resourceful provider. Look at verse 14. She is like the merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. This description of a godly wife and mother deals with her ability to bring useful, worthwhile, appealing things into the home. She travels far and wide, irrespective of distance, to acquire food and other supplies for her family. She goes to great lengths to make sure that her family has a good quantity of food and supplies and a good quality of food and supplies. She's compared to merchant ships. Merchant ships were trading ships. We might think of cargo ships. In our day and age, you see those huge cargo ships with all those containers on it, loaded with goods and merchandise and materials, going from port to port, all these far away places around the world, picking up and delivering valuable products and resources and commodities. Merchant ships back then, and to some degree in our day and age, were a symbol of wealth and prosperity. They were vital for economic growth, essential for the distribution of goods that were otherwise not available. Without them, certain supplies could never be acquired. And sometimes these merchant ships would face strong winds and rough seas and dangerous routes, but they were always willing to risk the journey to bring what was needed to a location. Well, that's who this godly wife and mother is compared to. She is like the merchant ships. And it's not just a merchant ships, it's not singular, it's plural. She's like a fleet of ships. Just as merchant ships bring goods and supplies and resources and food from distant lands, she also brings similar items into a home, picking up and delivering valuable products for a home, willing to go to great lengths to provide what is needed for a home. She is essential for the distribution of goods, vital for the growth of a family. And if it wasn't for her, a family might not enjoy certain things. She's diligent to bring home what a family needs, specifically, in this context, food, even if it may be difficult to do so. She's always looking to provide for her family with the best food possible. She brings her food from afar, verse 14 says, going wherever she needs to go to put food on the table, doing whatever she needs to do to keep the family well fed. And remember, back in those days, she's likely doing this all on foot, right? Walking from place to place. She didn't have the luxury of hopping in a car, heading to a store where she could find all of her grocery items in one location. It wasn't convenient for her to leave the home, walk miles to a destination, shop for food, and then lug it all home. She didn't live in the days of Instacart or DoorDash, right? Order online, delivered to your front door. It's that easy, that simple. She's a resourceful provider, and it required a lot of time and effort and energy. I mean, as we go through this passage, verses 10 to 31, that's the theme that's going to constantly be coming up. Her effort, the time that's required to do all of these things, the energy that she puts in, her work, her diligent work. But she's willing to do it all so that a family, here in verse 14, is well fed. That they're fortunate to have what they have. One commentator said, the fact that this excellent wife is bringing her food from afar shows that she has vision about how to elevate her household table beyond what is easy and readily accessible. She is not reacting to her surroundings. She is creating a vision for her household, then making and executing a plan to see it accomplished. She doesn't settle for what is convenient. She seeks what is best. And she may go out of her way for bargains instead of carelessly buying things at a much higher price. She is a prudent and shrewd shopper, making good judgments and going to great lengths to feed a family well. I love that one part. She has vision about how to elevate her household table beyond what is easy and readily accessible. In other words, she's not just serving up the same old thing every single night. It's not the same simple menu, hot dogs, mac and cheese, frozen pizza, or whatever it might be. No, those things may be easy and readily accessible, but this woman puts a lot more time and a lot more effort into her meals. She has vision about how to elevate her household table. She's creative, she's thoughtful, she's innovative with food. What's easy and accessible and convenient is not good enough for her family. She doesn't want to keep feeding her family low-quality food. She wants to provide something better, maybe something more nutritious, more variety. She wants her family to enjoy what she's bringing to them. Just like merchant ships that bring a wide variety of food from afar, this woman is striving to bring the same thing to her family. She has a plan, she executes a plan, she shops prudently and shrewdly, makes good decisions when it comes to food. You know, we might say she is a great meal planner. She is a great meal planner. Supplying her family with good food from afar. She is a resourceful provider. Sixth description of a godly wife and mother. She is a tireless caretaker. She is a tireless caretaker. Verse 15. She rises also while it is still night and gives food to her household and portions to her maidens. This description piggybacks on the previous verse, the previous description. Not only does this godly woman carefully shop for her household and bring in a variety of food from afar, as verse 14 talks about, but she also takes charge of cooking and meal preparation. She doesn't just purchase food and then plan the meals, but she also prepares the food and gives it to her household. And in order to do this, she gets up before the crack of dawn. Verse 15 says, she rises while it is still night. In ancient times, the preparation of meals wasn't quick and easy. There were no microwavable meals, breakfast sandwiches that you pop in a microwave in 90 seconds, and there you go. There's your breakfast. Refrigerators didn't exist, so no one was grabbing a bottle of milk, pouring it over a bowl of cereal. There was no such thing as instant oatmeal. Pour a little hot water over your oats, and voila, breakfast. Didn't happen in those days. Meal prep wasn't quick and easy. And so this woman gets up early to start preparing meals for the day. She's up before the sun breaks over the horizon, before first light. It's still dark outside. She's not sleeping in, ignoring the alarm, pulling the covers over her head because the sun is just too bright and blinding. She's not rolling back and forth in bed, too lazy and undisciplined to get the day started. She's not this sluggard or addicted to sleep. I mean, if you remember, as we went through the book of Proverbs, the Proverbs are very much against that kind of behavior, the behavior of a sluggard. It's the sluggard who turns back and forth in bed like a door turns on its hinges. Proverbs 26, verse 14. It's the sluggard who refuses to wake up and then pays a hefty price for not waking up and getting about his day. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. And what happens to the sluggard? Poverty comes upon him like a vagabond. Proverbs 6, verses 9 and 10. There are warnings against too much sleep. Warnings against loving sleep. Proverbs 20, verse 13. Do not love sleep, or else you will become poor. Laziness casts into a deep sleep, and an idle man will suffer hunger. Proverbs 19:15. It's the lazy, undisciplined man who can never get enough sleep and never get about his day, never gets anything done. This woman is not like that. She's not like that. She's the exact opposite. In many ways, she sacrifices sleep for the good of her family, putting the needs and well-being of her household before her own comfort and ease. She doesn't let precious hours of the day pass her by. Every minute of the day is too valuable to waste, especially in a day and age when there was no electricity. I mean, I got to make the most of daylight while I can. I mean, this woman is beating the sun to work. It's incredible. Is she tired? Of course she's tired. She's probably exhausted because the days are long, the nights are short. She's late to bed. Verse 18 talks about that. Early to rise, as this verse says. The few hours of sleep are never enough, but that's how she has disciplined her life. It's how she has structured her days. She maximizes every moment of the day, and as soon as she wakes up, she's preparing food for the family. She rises also while it is still night and gives food to her household. Makes you wonder what this woman was doing to get food ready for her family. Did she need to milk a cow or a goat? Was she making cheese? Was she gathering and grinding grains to bake bread? Was she fetching water from a well, starting a fire to cook, picking fruits and vegetables from a garden? I mean, I'm sure she was doing some of those things, maybe even all of those things. A whole list of things that she needed to do before food ended up on the table. Hence the reason for the early rise, why she's up early. But whatever she needed to do, she did it. Every single day, because her family needed to eat every single day. A lot of love went into her recipes, a lot of time and effort. Her cooking came from the heart. She kept busy in the kitchen, woke up, and began her meal prep. Why? To make sure that her family, again, was well fed and taken care of. She didn't want them to have any lack or to go without. It's interesting, the word food in the middle of verse 15 literally means prey, P-R-E-Y, like an animal captured and killed by a predator. I don't think it literally means that this woman is hunting for food, capturing and killing her meals, but it does imply that she plays a crucial role in the survival of her family. She's the one who gives prey, if you will, animals, captured animals, to her dependent and needy children. It's her responsibility to see them eat. It falls to her to make sure that they eat. The imagery here, she's like a lioness, using her strength and energy and ability to get food for her cubs, making sure that her cubs have food to survive. Lionesses provided food for their cubs, and if they didn't, they would starve to death. They would die. Well, in many ways, the same is true if a mother doesn't provide for her children. She is going out and getting the food and bringing it back to the home. Commentator Bruce Walke said this: the metaphor of a predator providing prey for its young is so shocking that most translators opt to render the Hebrew word as food and not prey. However, at the very least, this word represents provisions acquired only after the exercise of great strength, prowess, and ingenuity, and would seem to commend the extraordinary ability of a wife to provide food for her household, even against great odds. Beloved, this woman will not let her family go hungry. I mean, when you think of a lioness, there's no way that a lioness is letting her cubs go hungry. She'll exhaust herself in the hunt to provide food for her cubs. That's the imagery. This woman will not let her family go hungry. She is up early, finding, preparing, cooking, and serving food. And because of her, the family survives. The family eats. And not only her family, but also her household servants. Interesting. Look at verse 15 again. She rises also while it is still night and gives food to her household and portions to her maidens. Obviously, this family has maids and servants and workers and household help. It wasn't that uncommon for families to have help in the home, especially if you were a wealthy family. But the point is that everyone under this woman's care is provided for. Their needs are met. They all eat. She gives portions to her maidens. Just so you know, the word portions can either refer to provisions of food, it's how a lot of commentators take it, or prescribed tasks. And so this woman is either giving food to her servants or she's getting up and prescribing tasks to her servants. Personally, I think it refers to both. I think she's providing food for her servants because they are under her care and they are her responsibility. She's caring for their needs. And at the same time, she's also assigning them tasks. She's in charge of them. And so she has all this help, not to alleviate her responsibility, but to increase her productivity. She's not taking it easy just because she has maids and household help. No, she's wanting to maximize the productivity in the home. This isn't so that she can relax. She's assigning them work after they eat. All that to say, this woman provides for everyone under her care. She is a tireless cook and caretaker. She is a disciplined meal planner and provider. Ladies, how do you think through this role of a wife and mother? That she is, in fact, a caretaker, someone who plans and prepares meals. She looks for food, finds food, brings it to the home, prepares it, cooks it, gives it to her household. Do you, ladies, embrace this role, or do you resist it? Is this something that you embrace? Do you find it belittling and demeaning to plan and prepare meals every single day for a family? Do you think that spending time in a kitchen is beneath you, or maybe it's a waste of your time? Or think that it's sexist and outdated, and to expect a 21st century woman to do something like this, well, that's just downright offensive and insulting. I'm not saying that men can't work in a kitchen or cook, but typically in ancient times, men were already out of the home at their jobs, handling their responsibilities, doing their work. They had all of their things that they had to accomplish and achieve during a day. And it typically fell to a wife and mother to manage the responsibilities of the home, preparing and cooking meals being one of them. Ladies, is this a task that you embrace? Is it a duty that you're disciplined in? Rising up early, if need be, to give food to your household. Getting up and getting active to meet the needs of a home. Is that what characterizes you? Seventh description of a godly wife and mother. And this is the last description that we'll look at this morning. She is a discerning investor. She is a discerning investor. Verse 16. She considers a field and buys it, and from her earnings she plants a vineyard. I love this description of this woman because it shows us just how sharp and intelligent and venturous she is. She's not one to make foolish decisions. She doesn't act on impulse, isn't careless or irresponsible. She's not reckless or rash. Before she takes any step in a direction or decides to buy something, she is thinking very critically and carefully about it. Her actions are backed up by very calculated thoughts and considerations. The key word in this verse is the word considers. She considers a field and buys it. The Hebrew word means to put together a strategy for action or to construct a discerning plan of action. It's all about formulating a wise plan before doing something. And that's what this woman does. She puts together a strategic plan, a plan that is well formulated in her mind. And that happens first before she ever does anything else. And this woman is a thinker. She's not a dumb domestic housewife. She's got brains. She's keen. She's clever. She's looking at something from every angle, considering every possible outcome. She's weighing the pros and the cons, contemplating advantages and disadvantages. Never would she act impulsively or thoughtlessly, because if she did, it would put her household at risk. And she's not going to do that. She would never want to do that. That's the last thing that she wants to do to a family, put them at risk. And so she's not the type of woman who walks into a store and starts buying everything that catches her eye. She doesn't buy impulsively. Spending money because she feels like spending money, buying things because that's what she wants and that's what she desires, racking up credit card debt because she feels so strongly about something. No. Feelings and desires don't dictate and determine her decisions. Wisdom and discernment and discretion dictate her decisions. And notice what this woman decides to buy after she's thought through it very carefully and critically. Verse 16, she considers a field and buys it. She buys a field. Why would she do something like that? You're going to buy a field. Well, she's clearly done her research, right? She considers. She has this strategic plan. She's weighed the pros and cons, considered every possible outcome, thought long and hard about the advantages and disadvantages. She obviously sees value and purpose for this field, and in her mind, she knows exactly how to use it for the benefit of a family. Remember, she's 10 steps ahead in her mind. That's how smart and intelligent she is. She has already thought this through to the end. She sees the end goal, and she knows exactly how to get there. This field is a gold mine for her family. Look at the second half of verse 16. She considers a field and buys it. And what does she do with it? From her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She doesn't just buy a field to have a field. That's something that I would do. I would just buy a field to have a field because I like land and I like property. I would just want a field to have a field. She doesn't do that. She converts a raw field, overrun probably with weeds and rocks and other debris, into a fertile, fruit-bearing, lucrative vineyard. In ancient times, a vineyard was one of the most prized and profitable industries that someone could invest in. It was a symbol of prosperity and blessing. It was a source of luxury and income. It was a vital part of the agrarian economy. The produce of a vineyard, primarily grapes that were used in the production of wine, well, that was a staple in daily life, and it was oftentimes used in religious ceremonies. And so the importance and the value and worth of a vineyard, it can't be overstated. It was a precious and treasured commodity. And if you had one, your family was blessed. Your family was blessed. It meant that the land was good, it meant that life was good, and it meant that the Lord was providing in abundant ways. One of the very first things that Noah did after he got off the ark, in Genesis chapter 9, verse 6. He started farming, but then planted a vineyard because he knew how valuable it was and how important it was. Granted, he got drunk off of his own vineyard, but still, he saw the value of it. The promised land that God gave his people was a land of wheat and barley, of vines and vineyards and fig trees and pomegranates, and land of olive oil and honey. Deuteronomy 8, verse 8 says. I mean, it was a land that God's people were going into, and they wouldn't have any lack, no scarcity. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 10, God says this is the good land which the Lord your God has given to you. And it was a land that had vines and vineyards, among other things. All of that was part of living a good life, and that's what this woman had. For her and her family, a good life. She planted a vineyard so that her family would be richly blessed. I love how this woman buys the vineyard or invests into it. Verse 16 says, from her earnings. Not from her husband's earnings. She doesn't take a loan out at the bank. She's not borrowing money from relatives. No, from her own earnings. In other words, she's making money personally. This is money that she personally made, money accumulated by herself. The question is, where did she get this money from? I mean, she's working in the home. She's a housewife. She's a caretaker. So where is she getting all this extra income? How did she make it? How did she earn it? Well, she did have side jobs. She had a side hustle, we could say. The money, not only to purchase a piece of land, but also to cultivate it, prepare it, and plant a vineyard, comes from a lucrative side business. I mean, I'll just give you one verse. Look at verse 24. She makes linen garments and sells them and supplies belts to the tradesmen. And so she's making money by selling garments and belts. When she makes clothing for her family, verse 21, and clothing for herself, verse 22, she then makes a little extra clothing for resale, there in verse 24. She has a profitable side hustle. She makes money, saves money, and then goes out and buys a field to plant a vineyard, which then brings in more money. I mean, this woman is sharp. She's on top of it. She's wise. She's discerning. And what makes this even more remarkable is that this kind of opportunity was not the norm for women in ancient times. This was not the norm at all. Women typically didn't have the liberty and the opportunity to do these things, to sell and to buy and to invest. But since this woman is so sharp and so careful and cautious and thinks through every single detail before making a decision, so discerning, she's not reckless or impulsive or careless, because of that, her husband fully supports her ideas and her ambitions. And I think it underscores all the more just how much the heart of her husband trusts in her, as verse 11 says. He trusts her completely. He knows that when she has an idea to help the home thrive and flourish, she has thought through it carefully, prudently, wisely. Again, she's weighed all the pros and cons, thought long and hard through those advantages and disadvantages, considered every possible outcome, and that's how this godly woman operates. Not rashly, impulsively, carelessly, recklessly, but prudently and wisely. Is that how you operate, ladies? When you think through, what would be good for a family? Would this be a good purchase for a family? Would this benefit the home? Would this bless the home? Would this maximize maybe our production, our intake? Would it be more profitable for? When you are making decisions about what to buy, do you think through it that critically and that carefully? She doesn't want to do harm to a family. Not at all. So wise, so prudent. And so we've covered 7 of the 22 descriptions of a godly wife and mother. Verse 10, she is a priceless find. And we're starting to see that more and more, right? Just how priceless of a find she is. How valuable she is. Verse 11, she is a trustworthy helpmate. Verse 12, she is a do-good, beneficial companion. Verse 13, she is a joyful laborer. Verse 14, she is a resourceful provider. Verse 15, she is a tireless caretaker. And then verse 16, a discerning investor. And when we come back next week, we'll continue to look at these descriptions of a godly wife and mother. But in the meantime, as you hear these things, apply these things to your heart. Take them seriously. This is God's definition of biblical womanhood. This is what God prescribes for women. Your life might not look the exact same ways. Your duties and tasks not the exact same thing. But the conduct and the character of this wife is true for all of us. true for all of you ladies. So when we come back next week, we'll continue to look at those descriptions. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your word, the value of it. I pray that this would renew the mind of all of us and how we think through biblical womanhood. Not letting the culture or society, tell us how women should live and how women should act and what they need to do with their lives and what makes them significant and valuable. You tell us, Lord, how a woman is significant and valuable and what her roles and responsibilities are. And I pray that the ladies in this room, even single ladies, married women, would think through these things very carefully, applying them to their life, operating in the domain that you have ordained and prescribed for them so that they can thrive and flourish and benefit a home and a family. I pray that we would do these things for your glory. In Christ's name, amen.